My name is Feryal Albastaki, and I'm delighted to be welcoming you today to the Women's Pavilion at Expo 2020 Dubai.
It's such a pleasure to be sharing a platform with you today, because your own creative response to our rich regional heritage is so inspiring. Before I introduce Professor Reina, I want to take a moment to celebrate Feryal's contribution to the design field. Feryal was born and works in Dubai. She's a graduate of the United Arab Emirates University and is renowned for incorporating heritage and culture into her designs for fashion, accessories, and interiors.
Thank you so much, Dr. Reem. It's such a pleasure to be virtually present with you today. And also thank you, Feryal and Hafsa, for being here with us today. I'm so delighted to be here, and I would like to thank the Women's Pavilion of Dubai Expo for hosting us, and Stella and the entire team who've worked tirelessly to bring about such a smooth running event and to make us so welcome. As Dr. Reem says, I am especially happy to be here as part of our ongoing collaboration, my ongoing and London College Fashion's ongoing collaboration with the Zay Initiative. And we're not physically together today, but we will be soon when she delivers her mistress class to our Fashion Curation MA students. The Zay Initiative have been so generous in facilitating today's event, and I thank especially their COO, Emma Farmer, and Reem Ashraf in their communications and marketing team. I'm honoured and proud to have such wonderful research partners and to be sharing the platform with esteemed designer Feryal Albastaki and wonderful opinion former Hafsa Lodi. And we look forward to conversation with all of you when we get further on in our programme. Dr. Reem suggested that I focus on the importance of heritage in the Academy. The heritage celebrated in contemporary Muslim fashions was the vast and complex heritage of global Muslim dress and style cultures. The Zay Initiative protects, archives and studies the multi-faith traditions of dress in the Arab world. Our exhibition studied the multi-ethnic and multinational dress and style traditions of Muslims from around the world. Within this vast range, we were able to showcase designers from the Arab world and its diasporas, and of course from the Emirates and the GCC. And today, I'm going to share some of the behind-the-scenes decisions that created the content, marketing, and public engagement work of contemporary Muslim fashions. In some ways, this was a very American exhibition. It was a significant intervention in and by a major American museum. It was also an exhibition that I knew would be of tremendous interest to Muslims around the world, including Muslims not necessarily interested in fashion. The exhibition originated with Max Hollein, who had become director at the San Francisco Fine Art Museums after holding posts in Europe. He'd been struck in Europe by the variety and vitality of Muslim fashion in a Muslim minority context, and he wanted to explore that when he moved to America in an American context. The theme was developed by Jill D'Alessandro, the museum's expert curator in charge of costume and textile art, and the assistant curator Laura Carmelengo. The Fine Art Museums of San Francisco have a very strong reputation for fashion exhibitions. They treat fashion as an art form, so you might have heard of their exhibitions on Jean-Paul Gaultier and Oscar de la Renta, which were very highly rated and very popular. I came in as consulting curator to augment their curatorial expertise in fashion with my research expertise on religious and especially Muslim fashion cultures. Now, I learned so much about curation during this process from the inside. And as I share how we approach some of our dilemmas, I'm going to be very keen to hear from those of you involved in all forms of public messaging and marketing about religious and regional and national dress cultures. I'd really welcome hearing your perspective from the multinational and multi-ethnic context of Dubai. One of the first challenges we faced was defining our terms and refining the particular messaging of our exhibition. When the exhibition was first announced, it went under the working title of The Fashion of Islam. This language was one of the first things we wanted to address. It was a priority to consult with individuals and groups from the local San Francisco Bay Area Muslim communities. Laura did fantastic outreach. She recruited a wonderful advisory group, and we were honoured by the generosity of spirit from this set of people. There was enormous goodwill towards the museum, and there was a huge appetite to see programming that directly included Muslim experiences. It was abundantly clear that this group of more than 70 individuals did not always agree. Of course they didn't. We were often talking about contentious and sensitive topics. As curators, we knew it was essential that community members felt able to share their disagreements with us, and we knew this was not always easy. And we are very grateful that we had such a generous-hearted conversation that could articulate divergent Muslim opinion. This was very important because none of the three curators...
Hello everybody and Assalamu alaikum. When Contemporary Muslim Fashions exhibition was launching, I was currently finishing up my final draft of my book, and I was aching to be there because I actually used to live in the Bay Area, a 2-hour drive from the De Young Museum, but I was in my 3rd trimester of being heavily pregnant and decided not to make the trip, which I happen to be pregnant again now. Excuse me if I sound out of breath. Nonetheless, I really stayed in the loop with the media coverage and reception to the Contemporary Muslim Fashions exhibition, and I found that it had a profound impact on American perceptions of Muslim fashion, which I felt heavily invested in, being an American Muslim myself, who had grown up in the Bay Area at a time where modesty and fashion were never words that you put together. Modesty was not fashionable. It was seen as cultish and as matronly and as frumpy, so we've come a long way. It was also very inspiring that this exhibition took place at a time and in a political climate where Trump was in power. There was a lot of anti-Muslim rhetoric going on, and so I feel like this exhibit had a lot of synergy with the basic motivations of the early modest fashion movement, which was to dispel misconceptions about Muslim women, that were oppressed, that we have no style, that we're forced to cover up always, which in some cases, as Reina mentioned, is the case. But of course, this exhibit was focusing on modesty as choice and free will.
As with this exhibition, there's going to be a range of opinions and attachments to different things. And I think, your point, Dr. Reem, about, the abayas that somebody's wearing today is not at all the same. Well, it's not the same as the abaya they were wearing 10 years ago, let alone their mothers or their grandmothers. And again, for an audience, for viewers who don't know, who are not literate about abaya wearing cultures, I think we have time for one, maybe two more. In the blue here at the left-hand side, thank you.
Hello, my name is Adam Mohammed.
You need to hold the mic a little closer, thank you.
Up close.
Yeah.
My name is Adam Mohammed. I'm an architect and interested in the Emirati heritage, especially in the Emirati house. But I came upon a paper that was about the Emirati dress code, especially for women. That was before the establishment of the UAE. It was more colorful and it represented the tribes where the women came from. But then after the foundation of the UAE, the abaya came into play, and it was, I believe, it was part of establishing the national identity for women. But now, as we are, the new generation are going, they're becoming more educated, they're going into the workforce. Do you see that the heritage of the UAE in the fashion and the matter of fashion is evolving into a more chosen style than before, because it was the code was detected by society, by the tribe or the family more than the woman herself?
Thank you, that's a wonderful observation. And I'm gonna, in terms of the development of the abaya as a form of sort of national identity signaling, I'm going to pass over to Dr. Reem and then also to Feryal. Dr. Reem.
Yes, I think this is a very important question, and we get asked this question a lot. The abaya in itself was not an article of clothing that could be worn by everyone, because it was a dear and expensive article of clothing. And if we go to pre-oil period, you would find that in UAE culture in general, that sort of abaya would have been called suwaiya, and suwaiya in Arabic means worn for only specific times or hours, from sa'a, from time. And the reason being that these highly expensive articles of clothing would be owned by the higher echelons of society, and therefore it would be loaned to those who are not so fortunate during special ceremonies, especially weddings, when they are taking the bride from her father's house to her new husband's house, or when there are celebrations or official happenings and people wanted to elevate the status of what they are wearing. Now, in general, as women walked around in very private tribal situations, again, pre-oil time, when the community was very small, everybody knew each other, mostly all of them were related one way or the other. Women moved about freely without the need for that abaya. But when I say that, it doesn't mean they were walking around uncovered. They were walking, they used their thobe, which is their overgarment, and their shela, the headscarf, that were much larger in size and bigger and accommodated as a wrap for their body, so that they would continue to abide by their social and religious guidelines. With the onset of with urbanization, the onset of the United Arab Emirates, and opening up to the rest of the world, the national dress became a symbol of cohesion, of identity that was required, because the UAE population until today is much smaller than the rest of the demographics that are all have been entering and coming and living in the area. And the exchange and the openness to the rest of the world dictated socially to have some sort of variances to help cement national identity. Of course, this was never something that was forced or dictated upon people. It happened almost naturally. And today, now that we have a much more mature culture, we have individuals from the UAE who are attaining university degrees, getting into the workforce, participating in life and government, and so on and so forth. These women are establishing their own ideas and their own perspectives towards their traditional style of clothing, whereby they are trying to incorporate it, develop it, modify it to suit their functional needs, as well as their religious and social constraints. I hope I managed to put it in a very short, concise explanation.
That was wonderful, and I'm going to pass over to Feryal for your observations. Now that this is the nation state is well established, and as you say, different generations have different priorities with their clothing as well. Is this something that you see in your work?
Let me add a little bit on Dr. Reem says passionately. The old days, the photos that we have, the women of the United Arab Emirates, the available photos that are available, it's only black and white maybe, so we couldn't see the colors that they were wearing. But when you sit with the elder people, you know that they were living in the desert, yet they were wearing strong colors, very strong colors. The orange color, the red color, the green color, the fabrics were coming from India or from Africa. So they were strong women living in the desert with all the pastel colors, beige, the desert and all that, but they were wearing colorful. And as Dr. Reem said, they were wearing the suwaiya only when they're going out from the house, maybe to visit or vacation.
Thank you, Reem El Mutwalli, for joining us from London today, and Feryal Albastaki here, and also Hafsa Lodi, and all of you for being with us here in the Women's Pavilion at Expo 2020. Thank you so much, and have a very good afternoon.
Hello, my name is Hafsa Lodi. I'm an author and journalist. My book, Modesty Paradox, came out in 2020, and it explores the controversies of modest fashion, the key players, and the reasons why this has become a global trend. I'm here today at the Cartier Women's Pavilion at the Dubai Expo 2020 to discuss modest fashion and contemporary Muslim fashions, an exhibition that launched at the De Young Museum in San Francisco in 2019. I'm here with the Zay Initiative in collaboration with London College of Fashion's Professor Reina Lewis. I'm really excited to be talking about modest fashion, about the big brands who are really spearheading this movement in the industry, the influencers and change makers who are propelling modest fashion to the mainstream, and I'm personally excited about discussing where we think modest fashion will go next and what the future of modesty looks like in mainstream retail.
Hello, I'm Professor Reina Lewis from London College of Fashion, University of the Arts London, and I'm delighted to be here to run this event at the Women's Pavilion at Expo 2020 in collaboration with the Zay Initiative. I'm really excited to be talking to you today about my work as consulting curator on the exhibition Contemporary Muslim Fashions, which opened in San Francisco in 2018 and then toured to Frankfurt in Germany and New York. This is a wonderful opportunity to talk about the significance of cultural heritage in the museum and creative sector. I think it's really important that we help build the next generation of talent in the creative industries and heritage sector so that they become familiar, comfortable and expert in dealing with a range of world faith, dress cultures and traditions.